You know, a lot of people think that cover crops is really only about agriculture, about farming, but it really is about protecting our public waterways as well. The lake behind me, Bear Lake here in central Waupaca County, is one of the most popular lakes in the county. A lot of recreation, a lot of fishing, a great natural resource. And surrounding this lake is farmland, like most of the lakes in Wisconsin. And with cover crops, what we're able to do is not only hold soil in place that allows our farmers to be more productive, but it also keeps soil and nutrients in place, preventing those soil particles and the nutrients that are attached to them from moving into these water bodies and causing algae blooms or adding nitrogen to groundwater. So cover crops really are a win-win for both the growers as well as for the general public who benefit with cleaner water. Lisa and Derek, Waupaca County NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service conservationist and technician. We appreciate them being the first of their organization in Wisconsin to test drive this beautiful new demonstration rain simulator machine. What you see in front of you, excluding Lisa and Derek, the table and the trailer, they tell me, is about $30,000. So just arrived not too long ago, and so Lisa and Derek have the privilege of being the first ones to demonstrate it. So I'll let Lisa take over.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Yes, and actually this is the first time it's been run in Wisconsin, so bear with us if we run into any glitchy things. Try to keep that in mind. But what this simulator is designed to do is to show the effects of different types of management under a typical rainfall. And today we're going to put down about 1.5 inches of rain on these samples. Derek and I, over the course of the last 2 days, went out and obtained these samples, and these are all from a Hortonville fine sandy loam soil. So this is all the same soil type. That particular type of Hortonville is the most commonly farmed soil type in Waupaca County. So we wanted to make sure we got a consistent soil type so we can compare exactly what the differences are between all these different management types. The way we took a sample, just so you know there's no monkey business going on in the background, is there's a very heavy tray, and we place that into the soil. We slowly dig around the tray, and the tray gets sunk into the soil, and then we take out the whole sample in that form and flip it over and eventually get it into these trays here. So what we're looking at is a completely intact sample of the soil as it is out in the real world. So like I said, this is designed to show different types of management, but another way of looking at that is we need to begin to manage how every raindrop that comes down behaves when it hits our land. And so in the case of soil health, and you heard this a lot this morning, if we're looking at a soil that has good soil health and we get too much rain, like we did this summer, we want that soil to be able to absorb as much rainfall as possible. We want to manage that rain. We want to get it down to the subsoil and into the root zone. In contrast to that, if we have a season like we did a few years ago where we didn't get enough rain, we want our soil to be able to hold all that rainfall so the crops can utilize it. So that's really what we're looking at, is what can we do to make our soil more resilient? Because we're never going to have the perfect year. Well, once in a while we do, but it doesn't occur as often as abnormal years occur. So we really want to show what you all can do to modify your management to help you harvest that rainfall and utilize it to the best of its ability. And a healthy soil can do all that. In addition, I think we should all start thinking of our soil as a living thing, a living organism, and thinking of the biology in the soil as livestock that we need to take care of. Because once we do, we could start altering our management to benefit those livestock, to feed those livestock, so they can then take care of us. All right. So the way this thing works, the rainfall is going to come out of that nozzle. And the two things I want you to keep your eye on are these jars in the front, and these are going to collect the runoff that comes off the fields. And then the jars in the back, keep an eye on those too, because there's holes in the bottoms of these sample trays. And the water that comes down through the soil is going to get down to those holes, hopefully. If the soil's in good shape, it'll get down to the holes. And it's going to infiltrate through, and it's going to fall into these back set of buckets back here. So there's two sets of buckets I want you to keep your eyes on. And, okay. And then the different management types we have, I'll start from, I'll just stand behind here. We're going to start over here. This is the, we're going to call it undisturbed native vegetation. This soil was indeed farmed, but it hasn't been farmed for about 10 years. We planted prairie on it at a wetland restoration near Bear Creek. So this is as close as we could find to undisturbed native soil. So this is our control. Keep your eye on that too. The second sample here is a managed grazing pasture. So a lot of people will call that rest rotational pasture, where the pastures are given time, typically 20 to 30 days in between harvests, to regrow and rest. This particular sample had been grazed about 4 days before we took it. Is that correct? Okay. And I believe it's been grazed rotationally and intensively for at least, 5 years? Okay, thank you. The sample in the middle is long-term no-till. And the reason we're calling it long-term is because it does take a few years of no-till to start seeing the benefits of no-till. Usually 3 to 10 years to really start seeing the water quality benefits and the soil structure benefits. So this is our long-term no-till. It's definitely been no-till longer than 3 years. This sample here is a cover crop mix. So if you, and as I'm running this, I want you all to come up and take a look at it too, but this mix has a good variety of grasses, brassicas, and legumes in it. And then the last soil sample we have here is a conventionally tilled sample. You can think of this as your corn silage ground that's chiseled and disked in the fall and then left alone all winter long. Typically there's not a whole lot of residue. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna put about 1.5 inches of rain on this soil to simulate a typical storm. I know we had a lot of 1.5 inches rains this summer, so I think that's a pretty good amount of rain to be putting down. And since we can't control the sky, we're gonna use this and see what happens. All right. Are we ready? Okay. And if any other soil health people out there have any comments or questions, feel free to speak up. Oh, and the rocks are just here to keep the buckets from swaying back and forth, so they should have no impact on what we're seeing today. Greg wanted me to mention the slope. These are set at about a 6% field slope, which is a pretty typical slope for this soil type in Waupaca County. Okay.
While we wait for it to rain some more, I just wanted to also recognize Josh Werner. Josh is the individual doing the videotaping here. We thought because of the unique opportunity to have this demonstration, who knows when the next time that we'll be able to bring it back. Hopefully again, but you never know. Josh, who works for City of Waupaca and runs the city cable television station, agreed to come out and record this. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to have this recorded in a professional HD quality recording, and that we'll be able to make it available, post it on our website, so that if you'd like to share it with others, customers, clients, be able to do that.
One of my colleagues did remind me to mention a couple things. If you look at the conventional tillage here on the right, the backsplash of this machine will show you that there is quite a bit of soil being moved off the surface. And if you've ever seen a rainfall, a raindrop come down on a slow motion video camera, that raindrop is like a little bomb. And once it hits that soil surface, if that soil surface is not protected, that soil literally explodes up and the soil particles basically disintegrate. The other thing you're getting here with this end sample is, the soil is not only eroding off the top of the soil, a lot of that good stuff, the good organic matter, is also eroding through the soil, and it's actually going to clog up a lot of that pore space, if there is any, and prevent the infiltration. So you're getting two negative effects. You're getting erosion off the top and erosion from below. And with that soil erosion, what's coming out with that water? We all know it's not just soil. It's any amendments we've added. It's phosphorus. It's chemicals. And I think in Brian's handout, 1 pound of phosphorus will produce 400 pounds of algae. So we don't want that phosphorus leaving the field. Most of the phosphorus is tied to the soil particle, so we really want to keep that phosphorus on the field where we can utilize it. And now that I do have a captive audience, I just wanted to mention soil health principles. We can really summarize them using 4 bullet points. Really simple stuff. Number 1, keep your soil covered. So whether that means residue, cover crops, anything to keep that soil covered, even a layer of manure is coverage. So keep it covered. Minimize the disturbance to that soil is number 2. Whether it's no-till, minimum tillage, whether it's applying manure on top of a living cover instead of applying manure after the crops are planted, that's a big thing. Number 3, using a diverse species on your soil. I like potato chips, but if that's all I ate for my entire diet was potato chips, I wouldn't do so well. I wouldn't be very healthy. And the soil organisms are the same way. If you're just giving them corn and soybeans, they're not very healthy. They're not going to perform. So give them something else besides corn and soybeans. Diversify your rotation with either cover crops, alfalfa cover, anything, small grains, diversify. And then the last is just make sure those organisms have something to eat, so keep a living root in the soil as much as during the year as possible. So give them something to eat. Okay. Do I really need to say anything now? It's kind of obvious, isn't it? Pat, if you want to chime in too, you've done this more than I have, so this is my first time I've given a speech. All right, So does anybody have any comments or questions before I kind of talk about this? No? Okay. Derek and I did a dry run of this in the back of our parking lot the other day just to make sure we knew what we were doing because we've never run this before. And I was really surprised at how well this cover crop mixture performed. I don't know if you all are too, but I think it's pretty evident that most of that water did infiltrate. If you look at the bucket in the back, it's very telling there. I don't need to say anything about this end one here.
Unless there's a drought, then I'd care. If the other one's not, there's no infiltration. Pull that one out.
Oh, this one here?
Yeah.
Right, and I bet if I was to take this tray and flip it over, which I'm not gonna do, but I bet if I was to, I bet you the bottom would be dry. And that means the water's not even getting down 3 to 4 inches, and that's not what we want. The long-term no-till looks pretty good. The rotational grazing looks very good. And then there's our control on the left.
What percent slope are those?
6%. Yeah. We wanted to be as realistic as possible. We saw it set up for 12% slope, but we don't have a lot of 12% slopes in Waupaca County, so we went with 6. The other thing we noticed, I don't know if you all kept your eye on this rock at the top of this tray before we started it, but it was covered. I put this here on purpose because I wanted to see how much soil came off of there. And a lot of people say, well, we have to pick rocks every spring because they come up with freezing and thawing, which is true to some extent. But I think a lot of the rocks are exposed because we're losing topsoil and we just don't realize it. And then they pop up and they're exposed and we can see them. Oh, we got some more rocks to pick this year. So a little bit of that is true too.
Rita?
I wonder if you could just tell us about, is this something that travels all over your setup here? All over the state or all over the nation?
Well, this one was just purchased for the state, for Wisconsin. So after it's done here, it is going to travel over to Green Bay to have another field day over there. And the idea is to rotate it around the state, and whatever county needs to do a field day like this one, they can come and get the machine, and it'll travel all over. And other states do have these. I'm not real familiar with what states have them, what states don't, but I think most of the states in our country have them. But this is the maiden voyage with this one. So glad we have it.
Let's give Lisa and Derek a hand for... There was another question right here.
How's the holding capacity on the two on the left? It's holding a lot of water. How long would you expect that water to stay before it infiltrate down?
That's a really good point. So when we have these big storm events like we have had lately, and you know, drop a little water hits a hard surface like a lawn or a driveway, it's going to run off very quickly. With the native vegetation, that's a good example of how the water takes a lot of the water takes a lot of time to infiltrate through that soil structure, and it's not running off the field. So we've got nice, slow, deep percolation, and that's really what you want. You want that water to be held in the soil so our crops can use it.
Jamie is suggesting we just on the ground.
I could flip this one. All right, let's see if my theory holds true. Oh, it's wet. Now, we did run this the other day, so, but if anybody wants to come up and feel the soil structure, and it's dry right there. You want to flip that one too?
You know Barry has to refill all these.
I know. Let's just do this.
Why he gets the big one?
Oh, yeah.
Looks like there's a lot more water at the bottom of this one.
A lot more holes too. Okay, so the sample here, it is
not super saturated up in this area. I think because of our slope, we accumulated a lot more water down on the bottom. But no, it's wet, but it's not super wet. But again, Derek and I ran an inch of water over these samples a couple days ago. So they were not saturated, but moist to begin with. But this one, you can definitely see that there's a lot more water holding going on in this soil. You can actually see that there's a lot more structure. You can see the pore space. You can see the earthworm holes. So I think between the two, it's a pretty good contrast. If anybody wants to come up and take a look at the differences and feel them, that would be fine. Any other questions?